The black smoke from the bus exhaust choked my throat as I watched the taillights of my daughter's car fade into the traffic without looking back even a single time. I am Eleanor. I am 78 years old. I was the most sought-after seamstress in the city, and my eyes have seen more hypocrisy than fine fabrics. They think I am an old rag they can discard, but they forgot that I know the exact point where the thread of their inheritance breaks. The 2 p.m. sun beat down like lead on the dirty asphalt of the bus terminal. It was a sticky heat, the kind that crawls under your clothes and makes you feel heavier older. Beside me, on a floor stained with grease and ancient chewing gum, rested a blue plastic suitcase. It wasn't mine. It was one that Monica, my eldest daughter, had bought on sale at a supermarket 2 days ago. For traveling, Mom, lighter is better, she told me with that crooked smile she gets when she lies. Inside that ridiculous suitcase was, according to them, my entire life. 3 cotton dresses, my blood pressure medication, a pair of orthopedic shoes, and a framed photo of my late husband, Albert. That was all that in their judgment I needed to go die far away. "Stay right here, Mom, don't move, so." Valerie, the middle one, had told me barely 10 minutes ago. She didn't even get out of the car to give me a hug. She just rolled down the window, the AC blowing in her face, and handed me a crumpled ticket. "The bus leaves at 5. Out there in the town of St. Jude, there's a really good nursing home run by nuns. You'll have a better place there where you won't be a burden. We just don't have the room at the house anymore. You know how the kids are. You are a burden." Those words echoed in my head louder than the horns of the buses pulling in and out. I sat down on a metal bench that burned my skin. People rushed by, dragging bags, shouting names, eating junk food. Nobody noticed the white-haired old woman, perfectly styled in a bun, wearing a pearl gray tailored suit that I had made for myself 15 years ago. A suit that, unlike their consciences, remained spotless. I looked at the ticket in my hand. St. Jude. A godforsaken town 6 hours away down dirt roads, a place where they dump the old folks who are no longer useful for babysitting grandkids or loaning out their pension. My 3 daughters, Monica, Valerie, and Susan. The 3 little girls I dressed in silk and lace when we didn't even have enough to eat meat every day. The 3 women whose college tuition I paid by sewing until my fingers were covered in calluses and my vision blurred. They thought old age had made me stupid. They thought my silence over the last few months while they divided up my furniture and argued over what to do with my house was a sign of dementia. Poor fools. The silence of a seamstress is not empty, it is concentration. When you sew, you keep quiet so the stitch comes out straight. And I had been basting a plan for months, even though I didn't expect the final blow to be as brutal as leaving me stranded in a fourth-rate terminal. Susan, the youngest, the one who was always my favorite, was in the back seat of the car. I saw her in the rearview mirror before they made me get out. Her eyes were glued to her phone. She didn't even look up to see her mother standing on the sidewalk all alone with a plastic suitcase. That was what hurt the most. Indifference hurts more than hate. Hate at least implies passion. Indifference is like you're already dead. An hour passed. The heat tightened its grip and my mouth felt dry as a desert. A street vendor walked by shouting, "Water soda, ice-cold water." I dug into my purse. Monica had left me a $50 bill and some loose change. "So you can buy something on the way," she had said, like it was some grand act of charity. I bought a bottle of warm water. I drank it slowly, counting every sip, because I knew the wait would be long. My mind started traveling backward, not out of nostalgia, but to review my mistakes. At what point did I raise 3 vultures? Maybe it was when Albert died and I tried to make up for his absence by giving them everything. I don't want them to suffer, I would tell myself while working 16-hour days in my shop. I gave them everything, and by giving them everything, I stripped them of the ability to be grateful. I remember last week, I was in my armchair, that green velvet one that Monica's daughter-in-law likes so much, pretending to sleep. They were in the dining room. "I can't stand her anymore," Valerie was saying. "She smells old, she walks slow, and the other day she almost dropped the soup. My kids get scared. The house is big, but she takes up the best room, the one downstairs," Monica replied. "If we kick her out, we can knock down the wall and expand the living room. It would look divine for parties." "And where do we send her?" Susan asked with that soft little voice that fools everyone. "Far away," Monica declared, "where she won't be a bother. There are cheap places out in the country. We'll tell her it's a spiritual retreat or something. Anyway, she doesn't even notice anything anymore." I did notice. I noticed everything. I noticed they had forged my signature to try and sell the property down south. I noticed they were stealing my jewelry piece by piece. Grandma probably lost it, they'd say. And I stayed quiet. I stayed quiet and watched, just like when you look for the flaw in a fabric before making the cut. 3 hours passed. The sun started to dip, but the heat didn't let up. My legs, swollen from poor circulation, began to throb. A stray dog, skinny and mangy, came over to sniff my shoes. I petted his head. He had more humanity in his sad eyes than my 3 daughters put together. "Poor mother," said a heavy-set woman who sat down next to me loaded with shopping bags. "Did they stand you up?" "No, ma'am," I answered with my firm voice, the one I used to negotiate with fabric suppliers. "I'm waiting for my ride." "Oh, good. There's a lot of evil out here. People come and leave folks dumped like trash. May God punish them." I smiled faintly. God takes his time, I thought. Sometimes you have to give divine justice a little push. I looked at the terminal clock. 5 hours had passed since the car drove away. The bus to St. Jude had already left and I hadn't moved. I had absolutely no intention of getting on that rusty rust bucket to go die among unknown nuns. It was time. With slow movements, not out of weakness but out of caution, I unbuttoned the cuff of my left sleeve. There on the inside of my jacket, I had sewn a secret pocket. It was a habit from my seamstress days, always putting a pocket where no one expects it to keep what's most valuable. My daughters had gone through my main purse, taken out my old savings book, which was already empty, and my old flip phone, the one with the giant numbers. "We're taking this so you don't lose it, Mom. The nuns will let you use their phone." But they didn't know about the other one. From the secret pocket, I pulled out a smartphone. Modern, slim, and shiny. I had bought it in secret 6 months ago, asking my neighbor's grandson, a good kid, to teach me how to use it. "Miss Eleanor, you learn fast," the boy would tell me. And boy, did I learn. I learned to use online banking, I learned to track locations, and above all, I learned to record conversations. I slid my finger across the screen. My hands were shaking a little, not from fear, but from the adrenaline rushing through my old veins. I didn't dial any daughter's number. I didn't call any neighbor to beg for charity. I scrolled through my contacts for a name, Julian Vance, attorney at law. Julian wasn't just any lawyer. He was the son of my first millionaire client. I made his first communion suit, his graduation suit, and his wedding tuxedo. He loved me like an aunt, and more importantly, he was the most feared legal shark in the city. He held my real will, not the damp paper my daughters thought they had. He had the original deeds to the house, the power of attorney documents, and control of the investment account I opened 40 years ago and never touched. The one that grew with compound interest while my daughters spent what I earned every single day. The phone rang twice. "Hello?" Julian's voice sounded deep and professional. "Julian, it's me, Eleanor," I said, and my voice didn't crack. It came out clear and powerful. "Miss Eleanor, what a pleasure. I was just about to call you for next week's signing. How are you?" "Listen to me carefully, Julian. There is no signing next week. The signing is today, or rather, the action is today." "What's wrong? You sound strange. Where are you?" His tone shifted from cordial to high alert in a single second. "I'm at the North Bus Terminal on bench 18 by the platform." "At the terminal? What are you doing out there, Miss Eleanor? Are you lost?" "No, son, I'm not lost. I was dumped." There was a silence on the other end of the line. A thick, heavy silence. "Who dumped you?" "Monica, Valerie, and Susan left me here with a plastic suitcase and a ticket for a nursing home in St. Jude. They told me I'm in the way. They took my house keys and my old phone. They think I'm on my way to the slaughterhouse." I heard the sound of a chair scraping violently and papers falling. Julian had shot up from his desk. "Those miserable wretches," he yelled, losing all his composure. "Miss Eleanor, don't move. I'm heading there right now. I'll send a private ambulance just in case, and I'm coming with my driver. No, better yet, I'm driving myself. I'll be there in 20 minutes. "I don't need an ambulance, Julian. I'm old, not sick. What I need is for you to bring the black binder." "The black binder?" He hesitated for a second. "The Queen Mother Protocol. That's the one. And bring the notary. I want to revoke power of attorney today before the sun goes down, and I want you to freeze all the authorized credit cards right now while we're talking." "Understood, Miss Eleanor. I am so sorry." "Don't be sorry, Julian. They just made the mistake of their lives. They thought they were abandoning a helpless old woman. They didn't know they were unleashing the beast." I hung up, slipped the phone back into the secret pocket, and calmly rebuttoned my sleeve. The lady next to me was staring with her mouth hanging open, but I didn't say a word. I smoothed the skirt of my gray suit. I brushed an imaginary piece of lint off my shoulder and straightened my spine. The sun was beginning to dye the sky orange. It was a dirty sunset, full of smog, but to me it looked like the dawn of a new era. Monica had to be arriving at my house right about now. She was probably popping open a bottle of wine celebrating with her sisters that the problem was gone. They were probably measuring the living room to see how to knock down the wall, laughing at how easy it was to fool the old lady. I pictured their faces. I pictured the moment they tried to pay for dinner with the card linked to my account, and the machine said, declined. I pictured the moment the locksmiths arrived to change the locks on my house. That house I built stitch by stitch, brick by brick, while they slept warm and safe. I looked at my hands. They were wrinkled with age spots, the knuckles slightly deformed by arthritis. But they were strong hands. Hands that had wielded heavy scissors that had cut through thick fabrics that had held up an entire family. I stood up from the bench. I left the blue plastic suitcase on the ground. I didn't want it. I didn't want anything that came from them. In the distance, I saw a large, elegant black car approaching, contrasting brutally with the dilapidated buses and dirty taxis of the terminal. It was Julian's Mercedes. He was coming in fast, dodging potholes with sheer urgency. People stepped back when they saw the vehicle. The car stopped right in front of me, ignoring the whistles of the traffic guards. The driver hopped out to open the door for me, but Julian was faster. He got out of the back seat impeccable in his navy blue suit and ran toward me with open arms. "Miss Eleanor." He hugged me tight, like he wanted to shield me from the whole world. "I'm fine, boy, I'm fine." I patted him on the back. "Did you bring what I asked for?" "Everything. The notary is waiting for us at my office, and I have the security team ready to head to your house the second you give the word." I nodded. "Let's go then. I have a lot of sewing to undo tonight." I got into the car. The air conditioning smelled of clean leather and lavender, erasing the stench of diesel and sweat from the terminal. I leaned back into the soft seat. As the car pulled away, I looked out the window and saw the blue suitcase alone and abandoned on the sidewalk surrounded by trash. That's where the selfless mother stayed. That's where the little old lady who was a burden stayed. The woman riding in the black car was no longer her. Now she was the owner of everything, and she was coming back to collect every tear with interest. My daughters wanted me to go far away. Well, I had gone. I had gone to a place they could never reach me, to the peak of the power I built. Myself, a power they in their greed forgot existed. The car accelerated out of the terminal. I pulled out my phone again and looked at a picture of the three of them when they were little, dressed as angels for a Christmas pageant. I felt a pang in my heart, a sharp, brief pain. But then I remembered Susan's empty stare and Monica's cruelty. I turned off the screen. The show was over. Now the trial was beginning. And the judge, jury, and executioner was me. The soft purr of Julian's Mercedes engine was the only sound in the world, a brutal contrast to the vulgar shouting and stale air of the terminal I had just left behind. I sank into the cream-colored leather seat, closing my eyes for a moment. The AC dried the cold sweat on the back of my neck, but it couldn't dry the rage boiling in my blood. My hands, the ones that had sewn wedding dresses for presidents' daughters and high society, rested on my knees. They weren't shaking anymore. They were curled into fists, firm as river stones. "Do you want to go straight to the house, Miss Eleanor?" Julian asked, looking at me in the rearview mirror with that mix of respect and concern he always had for me. "No, son," I replied without opening my eyes. "You don't walk into the house without weapons. Let's go to your office. I need to see my papers. I need to see my numbers. I need to remember exactly what I'm worth, because my daughters have made me feel like I'm worth less than a mismatched button." The drive to the city's financial district was fast. I watched the tall buildings roll by the glass, reflecting the sunset, and I thought about how funny time is. 50 years ago, I walked these exact same streets, carrying heavy rolls of fabric, wearing worn-out shoes with a half-empty stomach, dreaming of giving my girls a decent life. Now I was crossing the city in a luxury car, the owner of buildings my daughters didn't even know existed, preparing to strip them of that decent life they didn't know how to honor. We arrived at Julian's firm. Everything in there smelled of antique woodwax and power. I sat in the main chair at the head of the boardroom table. Julian didn't argue. He knew who was boss. In silence, he placed a thick, heavy black leather binder in front of me. On the cover, embossed in gold, were just two letters, E.M. Eleanor Mendez. My name, Not anyone's widow, not anyone's mother. My name. Here is everything, Miss Eleanor, Julian said, pouring me a cup of chamomile tea in fine porcelain. The inventory updated as of this morning. The investment accounts, the property deeds for the downtown commercial spaces, the shares in the textile plant, and of course the trust. I opened the binder. The smell of legal paper filled my lungs. I ran my fingers over the pages. Right there was the truth that Monica, Valerie, and Susan ignored. They thought we lived off Albert's pension and the little savings I kept under the mattress. They never understood that a seamstress listens a lot and speaks very little. When the bankers' wives came in to try on their dresses, they talked about investments. When the lawyers brought their suits in for tailoring, they talked about the law. And while I pinned hems and took in waistlines, I learned. I learned to buy land when nobody wanted it. I learned to invest in dollars when the local currency crashed. My daughters saw a needle in my hand. I saw a magic wand that turned fabric into gold. The main operating account. I pointed with my index finger, the pad toughened by years of pushing a needle. How much is available for immediate withdrawal? Enough to buy the entire bus terminal if you wanted to, Julian replied with a half smile. But I assume you don't want to buy buses. No, I said dryly. I want to buy my freedom and fund my justice. Julian, bring me the safe. The small one. Julian nodded and walked over to a painting on the wall that hid the wall safe. He came back with a gray metal box. I punched in the combination the date I opened my first tailor shop. The lid popped open with a satisfying click. Inside, there was no jewelry. My official jewelry, those cheap gold trinkets and cultured pearls, had already been stolen by my daughters bit by bit. What was in there was my real war chest, my Mont Blanc fountain pen, the one I used to sign my first deed, and a set of master brass keys that opened every door in my house, even the ones they had changed. There was also a red leather notebook. I picked up the notebook. Written inside in my meticulous cursive was every single loan I had ever given them that they conveniently forgot to pay back. Monica's wedding, Valerie's car, Susan's master's degree that she never finished. Sum after sum. They think I'm a useless old woman, I muttered, turning the pages. They think old age is some kind of fog that erases your brain. I stood up and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the lit-up city. Do you know what the worst part of being old is, Julian? I asked, looking at the car lights down below as tiny as ants. Tell me, Miss Eleanor. Invisibility. You become transparent. You walk into a room and nobody looks at you unless they need you to watch the kids or lend them money. They talk right in front of you, like you're a piece of furniture. Monica would talk to her lover on the phone while I was sitting 6 feet away knitting. Valerie would discuss her tax frauds at the dining room table while I ate my soup. They think because my ears are old, they're closed. They think because my eyes water, they can't see. I spun around to face him sharply. That invisibility was my greatest weapon. It let me see who they really were, and today, Julian. The spell is broken. Today, the invisible grandmother is making an appearance. I walked back to the table and picked up the fountain pen. The weight of the instrument in my hand gave me confidence. Let's begin, I ordered. Step 1, cutting the supply line. I want you to freeze all the authorized credit cards linked to my accounts. All of them. The one Monica uses for her beauty salons, the one Valerie uses for her businesses, and the one Susan uses for her trips. Done, Julian said, typing furiously on his laptop. As of this second, they are being declined. If they try to buy a pack of gum, the machine will tell them insufficient funds. I felt a dark, cold satisfaction. I pictured Monica right at that moment. They had probably ordered expensive food to celebrate my departure. Sushi, maybe, or Italian food from that pretentious place they love so much. I pictured the delivery guy waiting at the door and Monica swiping the card over and over, her face red with embarrassment and rage. Step 2, the revocation. I continued, my voice gaining strength with every word. The power of attorney I signed for them 3 years ago when I had that dizzy spell and they got scared, or rather, got excited thinking I was dying. That power of attorney that lets them manage the house. I want to revoke it right now. The notary is in the boardroom next door, waiting with the protocol ready, Julian assured me. We just need your signature. And step 3, I said, pausing. This was the most painful part, but also the most necessary. The will. Julian stopped typing and looked right at me. We change it, Miss Eleanor. We don't just change it. We destroy it and make a new one. In the previous one, I left them the house in equal parts and the money divided for their children. But their children, my grandkids. My voice cracked for a split second, but I recovered. My grandkids don't even say hello to me. They learned well from their mothers. There's Grandma, she smells like mothballs, Valerie's oldest said last week. They all laughed. I pressed my lips together. Draft a new one. The house, the money, the commercial spaces, everything goes to a charitable foundation for abandoned elderly people. I want the foundation to be named The Burdens. And to my daughters, I leave the absolute legal minimum required by law if there is anything left and a letter. That's it. That is a harsh decision, Miss Eleanor. Harsh was the metal bench at the terminal, Julian. Harsh was the sun on my face for 5 hours. Harsh is the loneliness when you're surrounded by family. This is just justice. A straight stitch to close an open wound. The notary walked in right then. He was a short, bald man with a sleepy face, but he woke up real fast when he saw my expression. I read the documents with the precision of someone checking a sewing pattern. Not a single comma slipped past me. I signed every page with my Mont Blanc pen, watching the black ink dry, sealing the fate of my 3 girls. With every signature, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The blue plastic suitcase left at the terminal contained the victim. The woman signing these papers was the survivor. Done, the notary said, stamping his seal with a sharp thud that echoed like a gunshot. As of this second, your daughters have no legal authority over anything. Not your accounts, not your property, not your person. I looked at the wall clock. It was 8 p.m. Good, I said, capping the pen. Now comes the physical part. Julian, do you have a contact at that private security firm? The ones who look like walking brick walls? Yes, Miss Eleanor. Titan Security. Ex-military, highly discreet, highly effective. Hire them. I want 3 guards at the front door of my house tonight. I don't want them to go inside. Not yet. I want them outside visible so my daughters get a little scared seeing uniformed men watching the house. And I want you to drive me to the house, Julian. Julian looked alarmed. Miss Eleanor, that's risky. There could be shouting violence. I'm not going to walk in there and get into a screaming match like a market vendor. Julian, I have class. I'm going to walk into my house through the front door. I'm going to sleep in my own bed. And if they say a single word out of line, you will show them the revocation of power and the guards will show them the door. I stood up and smoothed out my gray suit. I looked at myself in the reflection of the glass. Despite the exhaustion, my eyes shone with an intensity I hadn't seen in years. I fixed my white hair, securing the bobby pins in my bun. You know what, Julian? I said as he gathered the black binder. My whole life I sewed so others could shine. I sewed so my daughters would look beautiful at their parties, so they would look successful at their jobs. I was always the thread holding the pieces together, hidden on the inside, invisible, so the garment looked perfect. But the thread is the only thing keeping it all from falling apart. I walked toward the office door with a firm step. Tonight, I'm going to show them what happens when you pull the wrong thread. The whole dress unravels, and they're going to be left standing naked in the middle of the street. Julian opened the door for me and smiled with admiration. After you, Queen Mother. We went down to the parking garage. Night had completely fallen over the city, but I had never seen the path so clearly. I had the resources I had, the law, I had the willpower, and I had something they didn't expect, the master keys to my own life jingling in my pocket like war bells. I got into the car. This time, I didn't close my eyes. I looked straight ahead at the road that would take us back to my house, my occupied territory. The engine roared and we pulled out into the dark. The fear had been left behind at the terminal right next to the bottle of warm water. Now all that remained was the execution of a perfect plan tailor-made for their betrayal. The Mercedes engine shut off with a barely perceptible whisper, as if the car itself understood that our arrival required stealth. We were parked half a block from my house, hidden in the shadow of a giant flame tree I had planted myself 40 years ago, back when my hands didn't have spots and my husband Albert was alive to water the garden on Sundays. Through the tinted window, my house looked like a party boat in the middle of a dark ocean. Every single light was on. All of them. From the foyer to the kitchen, right up to the upstairs bedrooms. They had even turned on the backyard lanterns, the ones I was always so careful not to use to keep the electric bill down. I could hear music. It wasn't classical music or boleros. It was that modern, repetitive, vulgar noise my grandkids like. Looks like the party started early, Miss Eleanor, Julian muttered, watching the scene with a furrowed brow. His fingers drummed against the leather binder resting on his lap. "They're celebrating my funeral without a body," I replied, feeling the chill of the leather seat seep into my bones, not freezing me but hardening me. "They think the house is theirs. They think the air they're breathing in there doesn't smell like me anymore." I saw movement on the corner. A black SUV, identical to the ones politicians or cartel bosses use, slid in silently and blocked my driveway. 4 men stepped out. These weren't your average mall security guards. They were towers of muscle stuffed into black tactical suits wearing earpieces with stares that could cut glass. The Titan's security team. Julian wasn't joking when he said they were effective. They moved like shadows, 2 taking position at the main gate and 2 flanking the perimeter of the yard. "They're in position," Julian confirmed, looking at his phone. "Ready to make the cut, Miss Eleanor." I ran my thumb over the brass keys in my pocket. I felt the cold metal against my sweaty palm. Those keys opened the solid oak door I had custom carved in Michoacan. Those keys were the symbol that I was not a guest in my own life. "Let's go," I said. "I want to see their faces before they know I'm there. I want to be the needle that sticks in their shoe when they least expect it." We got out of the car. The night air was crisp, but it smelled of jasmine and treason. We walked slowly. Julian offered me his arm, but I gently pushed it away. I needed to walk on my own. My orthopedic shoes struck the pavement with a steady rhythm. Clack, clack, clack. The sound of justice approaching. When we reached the wrought iron gate, one of the Titan guards gave a slight nod and let us through without a word. There was no need for doorbells or announcements. I glided up the flagstone path toward the front door. From inside, the voices were crystal clear, amplified by the euphoria of alcohol and a cheap victory. "Finally, my God." It was Monica's voice, my firstborn. It sounded thick, slurred. "I thought she'd never leave. Did you see the look on her face when we gave her the blue suitcase? She looked like a wet puppy." There was laughter. Cruel laughter, the kind that scrapes the soul. "Oh, Monica, don't be like that," chimed in Susan, the good one, with her hypocritical tone. I felt a little bad for her. But hey, it was for the best. She'll be peaceful in St. Jude praying. She was just in the way here. Plus, I needed her room for my yoga studio. "And what are we going to do with all those old clothes?" asked Valerie, always practical, always calculating. "Those outdated tailored suits smell like mothballs." "To the trash," Monica decreed. "Tomorrow we'll hire a truck and have them haul everything away. Furniture, clothes, paintings, anything that smells like mom goes. I want the house spotless for the weekend." I invited the PTA parents over. I stopped in front of the oak door. My hand shook, but not out of fear. It was pure distilled wrath. They wanted to erase me. They wanted to unspool me from the history of this family like a loose thread on a botched hem. I pulled out the master key. I slid it into the lock, smoothly turning it millimeter by millimeter so the pins wouldn't make a sound. The well-oiled mechanism, I oiled it myself every 6 months, gave way without a complaint. I pushed the door open just a crack, just enough to see and hear without being seen. They were in the living room. They had pushed my Louis XV armchairs against the wall to make space. In the center, on my imported glass coffee table, were bottles from my personal wine cellar. Reserve red wines Albert used to save for special occasions, champagne I had saved for their weddings that had come and failed. They were chugging my history down in long gulps. The 3 of them were in there, barefoot, hair messy, glasses in hand. My grandkids weren't around. They had probably sent them up to their rooms with iPads so they wouldn't bother the strategic meeting. Right then, the service bell rang, a shrill sound that sliced through the laughter. "That must be the sushi," Valerie said, getting up lazily. "I ordered the premium combo from that Japanese place in the Golden Zone. $400 worth of raw fish to celebrate freedom." Valerie walked toward the entrance, passing within 6 feet of where I was hiding in the shadows of the foyer behind a large fern. She yanked the front door open, not noticing it was already unlocked. A young delivery guy in a motorcycle helmet, looking annoyed, was holding 3 massive brown paper bags with fancy logos. "Good evening. Order for Valerie Mendez. That'll be $425. Yeah, put it on this," Valerie said arrogantly, holding out a gold card. My authorized card, the one I gave her for the kids' emergencies, which she treated like her personal piggy bank. The kids slid the card into the portable terminal. There was a 3-second silence, then a sharp, nasty beep. "Beep, beep. Declined, ma'am," the kid said, looking at the screen. "What impossible?" Valerie let out a nervous little laugh. That card has no limit. It's my mother's, but I manage the accounts. Run it again. Your little machine probably just lost signal. The kid sighed, rolled his eyes, and tried again. Beep. Insufficient funds or card blocked by the issuer, the kid read out loud. Do you have another form of payment? From the living room, Monica yelled, Valerie, what's taking so long with the food? I'm starving. Hold on, this piece of junk isn't working, Valerie yelled back, and then she pulled another card from her back pocket. Monica's platinum card also linked to my main account. Try this one. The delivery guy, losing his patience, ran the second card. The result was identical. The sound of the rejection echoed in the silence of the foyer like a verdict. Ma'am, they're all declining. If you don't have cash, I have to take the order back. I've got other deliveries. Valerie turned red with fury. You're not taking anything anywhere. I am Valerie Mendez. This is a bank error. Monica, get out here. Monica and Susan stumbled over, glasses in hand, swaying a little. What's going on? Why all the yelling? The cards aren't going through. He says they're blocked. What do you mean, blocked? Monica frowned, her face twisted in disbelief. Mom never checks the statements until the end of the month. The bank probably just flagged the big charge and is being stupid. Here, try Susan's. Susan handed over her plastic. Third attempt, third failure. The delivery guy started zipping up his thermal bag. Sorry, ladies, no payment, no food. Wait, Monica shrieked, and for the first time I heard real fear in her voice. I'll call the bank. I'm the primary authorized user. Monica pulled out her phone and dialed, putting it on speaker while the delivery guy stood there tapping his foot. Good evening, Central Bank. You've reached the automated operator. The robotic voice filled the space. To report a stolen card, press 1. Your card ending in has been reported stolen and deactivated by the primary account holder at 6 p.m. The three of them froze. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator in the distance and my own calm breathing. Reported stolen, Susan whispered. But I have the card right here. Who reported it? Mom's on a bus headed to the middle of nowhere. Mom doesn't even know how to use the bank app. Somebody must have hacked us, Valerie said, turning pale. Or that lawyer Vance. He probably found out and is trying to take advantage. That was my cue. I stepped out from behind the fern. I didn't make a sound. I just took 3 steps into the light of the foyer chandelier. Julian appeared right beside me like a specter of legality, holding the black binder against his chest. It wasn't a hacker, Valerie, I said. My voice came out soft but loaded with authority, the same tone I used when correcting a botched seam on a silk dress. And Julian isn't taking advantage of anything. He is simply following my instructions. The three of them snapped their heads in my direction at the exact same time with an almost comical synchronization, like vultures caught in the middle of a feast. Their jaws dropped. The wine glass slipped from Susan's hand and shattered against the marble floor, spilling red wine like it was blood. Mom, Monica babbled. Her eyes were bulging, bloodshot from the alcohol and the shock. But what are you doing here? We left you at the terminal. The bus left at 5 o'clock. I missed the bus, I said with heavy irony, stepping slowly toward them. Or rather, I decided to change my destination. Turns out St. Jude didn't sound quite as appealing as taking back my house. Are you crazy? Valerie screamed, recovering from the initial shock and going on the attack like she always did. Look at you, you're delusional. How did you get here? Who brought you? You probably wandered off and bothered this poor man. She pointed at Julian with disgust. Mr. Vance, my mother suffers from senile dementia. I don't know what she told you, but you need to take her to a nursing home immediately. It's for her own good. Julian didn't even blink. He adjusted his glasses and looked at me, waiting for the order. I didn't look at Julian. I looked at the sushi delivery kid who was watching the scene like he was front row at a live soap opera. Young Manto, I said, pulling a $50 bill from my purse money I always kept tucked away in a secret compartment. Take this for your trouble. Take the food back. Nothing is being celebrated in this house tonight, and my daughter's credit has just been permanently cut off. The kid snatched the bill, mumbled a thank you, ma'am, and bolted, slamming the door behind him. The sound of the door slamming shut trapped us in a bubble of tension. Cut off our credit. Monica took a step forward, trying to use her height to intimidate me. A tactic that used to work when I was sitting in my wheelchair, but now standing tall with adrenaline pumping through my veins, it was utterly useless. Mom, stop saying stupid things. You're tired. Let's get you to your room. Well, your old room. We'll make you some tea, and tomorrow we'll take you back to the terminal. You can't be here. The kids get scared of your coughing. Nobody is going anywhere, Monica, Julian interrupted, stepping forward and opening the binder. And I strongly suggest you lower your voice. You are speaking to the absolute legal owner of this property and all the assets you've been squandering. Who are you to butt in, you hack lawyer? Valerie spat. We have power of attorney. Mom signed everything over to us 3 years ago. She doesn't decide anything. We manage the estate. She is mentally incapacitated. Julian pulled out a freshly stamped document, the ink still smelling of the office and the law. Notarial document 8945, signed and sealed 1 hour ago before public notary number 5. Julian read in a monotonous but lethal voice. Total and irrevocable revocation of all powers of attorney mandates and representations previously granted in favor of Monica Valerie and Susan Mendez. He looked up, peering at them over the rim of his glasses. In simple terms, that piece of paper you have locked in the safe isn't even good for wrapping fish anymore. As of 7:30 p.m. today, none of you have any legal authority over Eleanor Mendez or her assets, and any attempt to use her cards or accounts will be considered fraud and grand theft. Susan collapsed onto the sofa, pale as a sheet. No, this can't be happening. Mom, you wouldn't do this to us. We're your daughters. I walked into the living room. My footsteps echoed in the stunned silence of the three women. I walked over to my favorite armchair, the green velvet one they wanted to throw away. I ran my hand over the backrest, reclaiming my territory. I sat down slowly, with the majesty of a queen returning to her throne after a war. I crossed my hands in my lap and looked at them. I really looked at them, not with the eyes of a mother, but with the eyes of an expert seamstress, looking for flaws in the fabric. And I saw plenty. I saw envy, I saw greed, I saw fear. But I didn't see love. Not a single stitch of love. You left me on a metal bench in the sun, I said in a low voice. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. You gave me a plastic suitcase with old rags. You told me I was a burden. You'll have a better place out there, you said. It was for your own good, Monica interrupted hysterically. You're lonely here. You need round-the-clock care. Shut up. My voice cracked like a whip slicing through the air. Monica snapped her mouth shut. Do not ever interrupt me in my house again. I took a deep breath. You thought I was an old rag. You thought my silence was stupidity. But you forgot who taught you how to walk, who taught you how to eat, and more importantly, who paid for every single designer dress you're wearing right now. You forgot that everything you see around you, from the roof to the floorboards, came from my hands, my needles, my tired eyes. Valerie, always the most aggressive, tried one last desperate move. She lunged at me. Give me that phone, she screamed, trying to snatch the cell phone sticking out of my pocket. That lawyer brainwashed you. I'm calling the cops. I'm going to tell them you were kidnapped. Before she could get within 2 feet of me, the front door swung open again and 2 of the Titan guards walked in. They were massive. Just their presence filled the room with an undeniable physical threat. Valerie stopped dead in her tracks, crashing into an invisible wall of fear. Everything all right, Miss Eleanor? The head of security asked in a deep voice. Everything is under control, Commander, I replied without moving an inch. My daughter Valerie was just a little upset, but she's over it now, aren't you, dear? Valerie backed away, trembling, looking at the armed men and then back at me. You brought thugs into the house. Into our house, into my house. I corrected you. And they aren't thugs. They are my new security system. Because it turns out we have thieves in this neighborhood. Thieves who infiltrate the family, who steal jewelry from drawers, who forge signatures, and who abandon old women at bus terminals. I stood up from the armchair. The energy of the confrontation was keeping me on my feet stronger than any medicine. Julian explained their new living arrangements to them. Julian nodded and pulled out another document. Ladies, this property belongs exclusively to Miss Eleanor. Given that you are all adults and have no lease agreement, your presence here is legally considered trespassing should the owner decide to press charges. However, Miss Eleanor is generous. The 3 of them held their breath, waiting for a pardon. She is allowing you to stay tonight, Julian continued. Because it is late, and she doesn't want to throw you out on the street at this hour, something you didn't hesitate to do to her. But there are conditions. What conditions? Susan asked, whimpering. First, you will hand over every single key to this house right now. All of them, including the copies you gave the cleaning staff and your boyfriends. Second, tomorrow at 8 a.m., an auditing team will be here to inventory every single valuable in this house. If so much as a silver spoon is missing, criminal charges will be filed immediately. Third, you will sleep in the downstairs guest bedrooms. The upstairs bedrooms, your former bedrooms, have been sealed off for security reasons. Monica let out a nervous, unhinged laugh. Are you joking? You want us to sleep in the maids' quarters? There's no AC down there. My kids can't sleep in there. Your kids can sleep in the same bed as you, Monica. Or you can go to a hotel. Oh, right, your cards don't work. I walked right up to Monica until we were face to face. I could smell the expensive wine on her breath. You took my bed from me. You wanted to send me to a cot in a convent, and you're complaining about the guest room. You should be thanking me that I'm not sending you to sleep in the yard with the dogs. Though honestly, the dogs have shown me more loyalty than you. I held out my hand, palm up, demanding the keys. There was a moment of resistance. Monica clenched her fists. Valerie looked at the guards, calculating her odds. Susan just cried. But reality, heavy and brutal like an iron press, crushed down on them. They had no money, they had no legal power, and they had two ex-military men staring them down. Slowly, painfully, Monica pulled out her designer keychain. She dropped it into my hand. Then Valerie. Then Susan. The weight of the keys in my hand felt like the weight of victory, but it was a sad victory. I didn't feel joy. I felt the hollow confirmation that my suspicions were right. I had raised parasites, not daughters. Good, I said, dropping the keys into my pocket next to mine. Now get out of my sight. Go to the downstairs rooms and keep quiet. I want silence. If I hear a single yell, a single complaint, or if I see you trying to take anything of value, the security team has orders to drag you out to the street. And believe me, they won't be as delicate as I am. The three women who just hours ago felt like the queens of the world retreated with their heads hung low, dragging their feet down the service hallway. They looked like scolded little girls, but without the innocence of childhood. They were adults defeated by their own greed. Once they disappeared down the hall, I collapsed back into the armchair. The exhaustion hit me all at once like a tidal wave. My 78 years caught up to me in a single second. Julian walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. You did great, Miss Eleanor. It was flawless. It was horrific, Julian, I whispered, closing my eyes. Having to treat your daughters like enemies is the saddest thing a mother can do. But it was necessary. The fabric was rotting. I had to cut it out to save the garment. Do you want the guards to stay inside? Yes. One at their hallway door, one at the front entrance. I don't trust them. Desperation makes people do crazy things. And Julian, thank you. Thank you for bringing me the thread when I had run out. Always, Miss Eleanor. I was left alone in the living room. The lights were still blazing, illuminating the disaster of broken glass and open bottles. I looked at my hands. They were old, wrinkled, but they still had strength. I had won tonight's battle. I had taken back my castle. But I knew the war wasn't over. Tomorrow, when the sun came up and their hangovers wore off, they would try to counterattack. They'd try to manipulate the grandkids. They'd call other lawyers. They'd look for chinks in my armor. It didn't matter. I had my thimble on and my needle was threaded. I stood up and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window facing the garden. My reflection stared back at me, a small old woman with white hair. But behind that fragile image, I saw the shadow of who I really was. I wasn't a little old lady who was a burden. I was the designer of my own destiny, and I had just started sewing the most complicated suit of my life, the suit of my own dignity. I turned off the living room light, leaving them in the dark of their borrowed rooms while I walked up the stairs to my bedroom. The master bedroom. The one they never should have tried to take from me. Every step I took was a reaffirmation. I am in charge here. I woke up with the first ray of sunlight hitting my face. But this time it wasn't the scorching, dirty sun of the bus terminal. It was clean light filtered through the raw silk curtains of my bedroom. I stretched slowly, feeling my old bones pop, not in pain, but settling into place. It was the feeling of a garment finally fitting perfectly after many alterations. I got out of bed and put on my satin robe. As I walked past the full-length mirror, I draped my yellow measuring tape around my neck. That old companion with the numbers practically rubbed off from use. Today, I wasn't going to measure fabric. Today, I was going to measure shame. I walked down the stairs calmly. The house was dead silent, a stark contrast to the racket of cheap music from the night before. In the kitchen, I found the exact scene I expected. Monica, Valerie, and Susan were sitting around the small breakfast table, faces washed, deep bags under their eyes, holding mugs of instant coffee. They hadn't dared use the espresso machine. They knew they didn't have permission. When they saw me walk in, they tensed up. Monica, who was always the most arrogant, tried to force a smile, but it came out looking like a crooked, puckered seam. "Good morning, Mom," she said with a voice trying to sound sweet, but it sounded like crushed glass. "Did you sleep well? We were so worried." "Save the theater, Monica." I cut her off, pulling out my own porcelain mug and pouring the fresh ground coffee that Juana, the housekeeper who had returned this morning after I called her, had brewed for me. Instant coffee is for uninvited guests, and right now, you're all unwanted guests. Valerie slammed her hand on the table, though not very hard. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You punished us. You took the keys. The kids are terrified of those armed gorillas in the yard. We need to talk like civilized adults. Give us back access to the accounts, and let's just forget about this terminal nonsense." It was a misunderstanding. I turned around slowly, the steaming mug in my hand. A misunderstanding. You left me with $50 in a plastic suitcase. That's not a misunderstanding, Valerie. That's a crime. And speaking of crimes, the doorbell rang at exactly 8 a.m. "Open it," I ordered. "It's the company I promised you." Susan dragged her feet to open the door. Julian walked in looking sharp as ever, followed by three people my daughters didn't recognize. Two men with briefcases and a woman with a no-nonsense face holding a tablet. "Good morning, Miss Eleanor," Julian greeted with a slight bow. "The auditing team is ready." "Auditing?" Monica shrieked, jumping up from her chair. "You're going to audit us like we're common thieves. We are your daughters." "You are my daughters, yes?" I admitted, taking a sip of coffee. "But you're also the people who have been hauling things out of this house piece by piece for years. Proceed." The woman with the tablet started walking through the living room, pointing at empty spots in the display cabinets, faded marks on the walls where paintings used to hang, and gaps in the silverware drawer. My daughter stood petrified as the auditors called out the missing items. "Missing 19th century silver tea set," the auditor stated. "Missing oil painting landscape of Oaxaca. Missing 3 fur coats from the winter collection. Missing certificates for the commemorative gold coins." Every item called out was a slap in the face. Monica turned bright red. Valerie stared at the floor. Susan started crying silently. I took the tea set," Susan babbled. "But it was just to polish it, Mom. I swear. It was really tarnished." "Liar," I said calmly. "You sold it 3 months ago at the pawn shop downtown. I have the recovery receipt. Julian bought it back last week." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. I had stripped them naked without taking their clothes off. "Sit down," I ordered, pointing to the chairs at the main dining table. They obeyed. The auditors kept working in the background, a constant hum of noise, reminding them that every minute a new betrayal was being uncovered. I sat at the head of the table. Julian stood to my right, pulling documents out of his inseparable black binder. "Did you really think my money came from your father's pension? And whatever I saved hemming pants?" I began smoothing out an imaginary tablecloth with my hands. "You always saw me as small. The seamstress," you used to say with a hint of disdain to your rich friends. "My mom just sews to keep busy." Monica scoffed. "Mom, please. We know Dad left a decent life insurance policy, but it's not like you're Rockefeller. I don't know where you're getting the cash to pay these lawyers and security guards, but you're going to blow whatever little is left." I smiled. It was a cold smile, the kind I learned to use when a client tried to haggle over the price of a job that took months. "Julian, show them the pattern." Julian slid 3 thick folders across the table, one in front of each of them. "Open them." They did so reluctantly. When she saw the first page, Valerie's eyes went so wide, I thought they'd pop out of her skull. This can't be right," Valerie stammered. "Northern Textiles, Inc., the factory that supplies uniforms for every school in the state, the one that exports denim to the U.S." "The very same," I said. "I founded it 30 years ago while you girls were in middle school obsessing over your Sweet 16 parties. I started with 2 industrial sewing machines in a rented garage. Today, it's 3 industrial warehouses and 500 employees. But Monica was flipping through the pages frantically. It says here the majority shareholder is some company called EM Investments. Eleanor Mendez, Julian clarified. Your mother isn't just the owner of the house you sleep in. She is the owner of the company that manufactures the clothes you sell in your boutique. Monica dropped the folder like it was on fire. What? Number no, I buy from exclusive suppliers in the city. Suppliers that are subsidiaries of mine? I explained, savoring every syllable. I have been subsidizing your business from day one, honey. Those expensive Italian fabrics you sell, they roll right off my looms down at the industrial park. And the storefront for your boutique, who do you think owns that building? Monica went pale. I pay rent to Horizon Real Estate, which is 100% owned by Miss Eleanor, Julian finished. I looked at Valerie. And you, the financial genius. That loan that saved you from bankruptcy 2 years ago when you got tangled up in that stupid pyramid scheme, who do you think bought up your bad debt so you wouldn't go to prison for fraud? Valerie started shaking. That was an anonymous group of investors. That was me, I said, tapping the table with my index finger. Protected by a silver thimble I pulled from my pocket and slipped on just to emphasize the tap. I bought your freedom, Valerie, and you paid me back by leaving me stranded at a bus terminal to rot. Susan, the youngest, looked at her sisters and then at me with absolute terror. Mom, what about me? I don't have any businesses. I just take care of my kids. You live off the monthly allowance I religiously deposit into your account, I said softly. An allowance paid out from my stock dividends. Stocks that, by the way, are in my name, not your late father's like you always assumed. I stood up. The yellow measuring tape swung across my chest. For years, I played the part of the clueless little old lady who didn't understand numbers just to see if any of you had the decency to be honest. Poor mom, she doesn't even know how to use the ATM, you'd say. And I, the woman who handles international wire transfers from a secret phone, I let you talk. I wanted to see how far your greed went. And yesterday, I reached the end of the tape. You ran out of slack. Monica, tears of rage and humiliation welling in her eyes, tried one last attack. Fine. Keep your money. Let's go. Sisters. We don't need her handouts. We'll take the kids and you'll never see them again. Let's see who takes care of you when you get really sick. I was waiting for that threat. It was her dirtiest card, using my grandchildren. Sit down, Monica, I said, my voice like thunder. I am not finished. Julian pulled out 3 more envelopes. As Miss Eleanor's legal representative, I'm informing you that the education of all your children, her grandchildren, has been paid in full in advance, straight through college directly with the institutions. The trusts are ironclad. You cannot touch a single cent. But if you attempt to keep the children away from their grandmother, there is an emotional wellness clause that allows me to cut off the funding for their elite private schools. Do you want to pay those tuitions yourselves with your frozen bank accounts and bankrupt businesses? Be my guest. Take them. The 3 of them were speechless. They had lost their queen, their bishops, and their pawns. It was checkmate. What? What do you want us to do? Valerie asked, her voice broken, completely defeated. The arrogance was gone. Only the fear of the financial abyss opening beneath her feet remained. I walked slowly around the table, touching each of their shoulders, not with affection, but with weight. I want you to work, I said. The life of high society ladies is over. Work. Monica looked at me in horror. Yes, you, Monica. You are going to manage your boutique, but for real this time. The subsidized rent is over. You are going to pay me market rate. And if you can't balance the books, you shut it down and go sell tamales on the corner? I don't care. But Horizon Real Estate does not forgive late rent. I stopped behind Valerie. You, Valerie, are going to pay me back every single cent of the debt I absorbed. Julian drafted a payment plan for you. It is strict. You'll have to sell your brand new SUV and maybe move into a more modest apartment. You are going to learn what it costs to earn your bread. Finally, I reached Susan. And you, my little girl, you are going to learn how to take care of people. Not your kids, the nannies do that. You are going to take care of the people who are a burden. You are going to volunteer at the nursing home in St. Jude. Yes, the exact same one you wanted to send me to. You will go 3 times a week to wash sheets and feed the elderly folks who have no one to defend them. I want the timesheet signed by the Mother Superior every Friday. If it's missing a signature, there is no grocery check for you. I sat back down at the head of the table, folding my hands in my lap. Those are my conditions. If you don't like them, the door is wide open. You can walk out right now, but you leave with only the clothes on your backs. Nothing else. No cars, no cards, no jewelry. I stared right at them. I could practically see the gears turning in their brains, looking for a way out, a loophole, anything. But there was nothing. Julian had woven an impenetrable legal net, and I, their mother, had tied my heart in a double knot. And if we accept, Susan asked in a whisper, can we stay in the house? You can stay in the guest bedrooms, I corrected, until you prove you can pay for your own roof or until I decide I don't want you here anymore. And you will pay rent. Symbolic, sure, but rent nonetheless, so you understand that in this life, a roof is earned. Monica lowered her head. Tears fell onto the folder of the textile company she never knew was mine. Mom, why didn't you tell us sooner? Why did you let it get to this point? I didn't let you get to any point, I answered firmly. You walked yourselves right to the edge of the cliff. I just pulled the safety net away when you tried to push me over. I stood up, adjourning the meeting. Julian, have them sign the NDAs and the promissory notes. If any of them speaks ill of me in their social circles, the immediate penalty clause is triggered. I want them to remain my daughters in the eyes of society, but in here, they will know they are my debtors. I walked toward the dining room exit. Before crossing the threshold, I stopped and turned around one last time. Oh, and one more thing. That wall you wanted to knock down to expand the living room. I pointed at the load-bearing wall dividing the dining room from the parlor. That wall stays, not because it's structural, but because I like it. And the only thing getting broken in this house from today on are your illusions of living for free. I walked out into the garden. The sun was high, shining fiercely on the roses I had grafted myself. I took a deep breath of the morning air. It smelled like wet earth and victory. But it wasn't a sweet, sugary victory. It was a victory that tasted like iron, necessary and hard. In the distance, I heard Monica crying a loud, desperate sob. I didn't feel pity. For the first time in years, I felt like I was actually raising them. Late. Far too late. But I was finally doing my job as a mother, teaching them that actions have consequences, and that the woman who gave them life and built their world commands respect. I pulled my secret phone out of my pocket. I had a text from the bank, security transfers complete. Assets protected. I put the phone away and stroked the petals of a rosebush. A thorn pricked my finger, drawing a tiny drop of blood. I wiped it away without flinching. A little blood is the price of any sewing worth doing. They had tried to toss me aside like a useless scrap of fabric, but they had just discovered that I owned the whole bolt of cloth, all the needles, and above all the scissors that cut off the supply of their ingratitude. 6 months have passed since that afternoon at the bus terminal. 6 months since the sun burned my skin and betrayal burned my soul. Today, the sun pours through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my living room, but it no longer burns. It illuminates. It illuminates a house that for the first time in decades runs like a Swiss watch and not a three-ring circus. I am sitting in my green velvet armchair, the one they wanted to throw in the trash. Across my lap, I don't have a blanket for a freezing old lady. I have the ledger for Northern Textiles. Beside me, Julian Vance sips his coffee with a satisfied smile. We don't need to talk much. The silence in this house has changed its quality. Before, it was a silence of indifference toward me. Now it is a silence of respect. The kind you earn when you prove you have a steady hand and sharp scissors. It's 2 p.m. on a Sunday, time for the weekly reckoning. The dining room door opens and Monica walks in. She no longer walks like she's levitating on a cloud of superiority. She walks with the heavy step of someone who has been on her feet for 8 hours a day, dealing with spoiled customers. Her hands, once adorned with acrylic nails that made it impossible to pick up a coin, are now short, clean, and sporting a couple of Band-Aids. "Good afternoon, Mom," she says, and she says it looking me in the eye, not staring at a phone screen. "Good afternoon, Monica. How was the week at the boutique?" "Tough," she admits, sitting down carefully. "The new fall collection got delayed. I had to go down to the warehouse myself and sort the inventory because I couldn't afford to pay the staff overtime." "And did you learn anything?" I ask without looking up from my numbers. "That boxes are heavy," she sighs, "and that you can feel cheap fabric just by touching it. You were right, Mom. People pay for quality, not the label." Sales are up 15% since I stopped buying imported garbage and started using your factory's textiles. I nod slightly. It's the first time in her life Monica has talked about actual work and not public relations. Next, Valerie walks in. She drove over in a compact car, an economy model she bought after selling her luxury SUV to pay down her debt to me. She has a folder tucked under her arm. She looks thinner, but not from some trendy diet. It's the thinness that comes from the stress of having to balance real books. "Here's this month's deposit, Mother," she says, placing a bank slip on the table. "And the austerity plan for my household. I cut the landscaping service and the kids' horseback riding lessons. They're playing soccer in the municipal league now." "And what do the kids say?" I inquire, remembering how my grandkids used to look at me with disgust. "They cried at first." Valerie confesses, looking down. "But last weekend they scored their first goal. They were thrilled. I think it's good for them to run on real dirt instead of synthetic turf." Finally, Susan arrives. She's the one who has changed the most. Her face, previously caked in makeup to hide the emptiness of her life, is now scrubbed clean and holds a different kind of glow. She smells like unscented soap and disinfectant. She just got back from the nursing home in St. Jude. "Hi, Mom," she says softly, leaning in to kiss my forehead. She used to be repulsed by touching my old skin. Now she does it naturally. "How are my friends in St. Jude?" I ask. "Mr. Anselmo passed away yesterday." Susan says, her voice cracking. I see a genuine tear roll down her cheek. "I was with him until the end. I held his hand because he had no family. He told me. He told me I was an angel." Susan covers her mouth, overwhelmed. "No one has ever said anything like that to me, Mom. I was always the daughter of or the wife of. Over there, I'm Susan. I'm useful. I washed sheets. I fed 3 ladies who can't move their arms, and I read the newspaper to a blind man. I'm exhausted. My back kills me, but I sleep better than I ever have." I set the ledger on the table and take off my glasses. I look at the 3 of them. My 3 girls. The 3 women I raised wrong by giving them everything to spare them pain, the ones I had to break so I could put them back together. "Serve yourselves," I order. My treat today, I made stew. We eat in peace. My grandkids, who used to run around screaming and demanding things, now sit quietly and clear their plates when they finish. Valerie has taught them that Grandma isn't a piece of furniture, she's the captain of the ship. And if the captain gets angry, the ship sinks. When we finish our coffee, Julian clears his throat. "That's the signal, girls," I say, and the room falls dead silent. It's been a 6-month trial period. You have cried, you have thrown tantrums, and you have sweat. You have paid rent to live in the house where you were born, and you have worked to pay for the food you put in your mouths. They tense up, waiting for the verdict. Will I kick them out? Will I give everything back? I have made a decision regarding the future of my estate. I announce. Monica grips the tablecloth. That old gleam of greed tries to peek out, but she quickly suppresses it. "I am not giving you back control of my accounts," I state flatly. I watch their shoulders drop. "But I am not going to leave you destitute when I die either." I signal Julian, who hands each of them a blue folder. "I have officially established the Burdens Foundation. 90% of my assets, including the factory, the commercial properties, and this house, will become the property of the foundation the moment I pass away. The foundation's purpose will be to build and maintain dignified assisted living facilities for abandoned elderly people, complete with vocational workshops so they can feel useful until their very last day." "And us," Valerie asks, reading the document hungrily. "You will be the employees of the foundation, I decree. Monica, you will run the sewing workshops and handle the sales of the artisanal goods made by the residents. You will use your talent for selling, but to sell dignity, not vanity. Valerie, you will handle the administration. I want every single penny audited. If 1 dime goes missing, you're out on the street. And you, Susan, you will be the director of operations for the nursing homes. You have the heart for it, now that you've finally found it." The 3 of them sit in stunned silence. It's not the multi-million-dollar inheritance they were expecting to blow on vacations and jewelry. It is an inheritance of labor, an inheritance of responsibility. "You will earn a decent salary," I continue. "A good salary, highly competitive for the market. You'll be able to live well, pay for schools, and take modest vacations. But never listen to me very carefully. Never again will you be rich simply because you carry my last name. You are going to have to earn your wealth by serving others. Susan is the first to look up. She smiles through her tears. I love it, Mom. I really do. Valerie nods, calculating. It's a steady paycheck, and it's a purpose. I accept. Monica is the hardest one. She stares at the paper for a long time. Then she looks at her own hands toughened by the work of the last few months. I just wanted to be important, Mom. I wanted people to admire me. People admire those who build, sweetheart, not those who spend, I reply. With this foundation, you will do something worth remembering. Monica takes a deep breath and nods. All right, it's a deal. I push back from the table and stand up. My knees ache. Age is unforgiving, but I feel lighter than I ever have. I have unstitched the old moth-eaten suit of my family, and I have tailored a new one. It's a work suit made of tough fabric with double seams so it will never tear again. I walk out into the garden, leaving them to discuss the details with Julian. The afternoon sun bathes my rose bushes. I walk over to the wall dividing my house from the street, the wall that protects my world. I remember the terminal. I remember the fear, the thirst, and the feeling of being trash. I am grateful for that moment. If they hadn't broken my heart that day, I never would have found the strength to fix their lives. Sometimes a mother's love isn't a soft hug. Sometimes it's a hard shove so her children learn to walk down the right path. I pull out my phone, the modern one, the one that is no longer a secret, because now everyone knows that Grandma Eleanor sees everything and knows everything. I dial the number for the Mother Superior at St. Jude. Mother, it's Eleanor. Get the beds ready. I'm sending the first truckload of new orthopedic mattresses tomorrow. Yes. And tell Mr. Anselmo, God rest his soul, that his death was not in vain. He taught my daughter how to be human. I hang up. The wind rustles the leaves in the trees. I am Eleanor. I am 79 years old. I was a seamstress, I was a victim, and I was a judge. But today, looking at my daughters inside working together, reviewing papers and planning how to help others, I feel like I am finally what I always wanted to be. A mother who leaves a legacy that cannot be spent stolen or lost on a bet. I look at my hands one last time. They have spots, they have wrinkles, they shake a little, but they are no longer holding a blue plastic suitcase full of contempt. They are holding the invisible thread that keeps this family together, a thread I spun myself with patience, pain, and an unbreakable will of steel. The needle has made its final stitch, and the knot is tight. Now I can finally rest. Please note that the story we just shared is created for educational and inspirational purposes, only designed to spark reflection on our family dynamics and personal values. When I reflect on Eleanor's journey, I am deeply moved by the stark reminder that true love sometimes requires us to make the hardest, most painful decisions for those we care about. We live in a world that often equates providing financial comfort with showing affection. Yet this story proves that handing everything to our children can actually strip them of their humanity. Eleanor's silent strength teaches us that the elderly are not discarded rags, but rather the very foundation and compass of our families, holding wisdom we desperately need. I truly believe that the greatest tragedy isn't losing our wealth, but losing our empathy and sense of gratitude toward the people who sacrificed everything for us. Looking closely at the daughter's transformation, we see a beautiful truth. Dignity is never inherited. It is built with our own two hands through hard work and service to others. This narrative urges us to look at our own lives and ask whether we are nurturing entitlement or raising compassionate human beings. We must start applying this lesson today by setting healthy boundaries, teaching our children the value of honest labor, and showing them the joy of helping those who cannot offer anything in return. It is never too late to correct our mistakes, just as Eleanor found the courage to unstitch her family's torn fabric and sow a new legacy of accountability. True wealth isn't found in bank accounts, luxury cars, or designer clothes, but in the peace of mind that comes from living a purposeful life. I encourage you to look at the older generation not as a burden, but as a living library of resilience that deserves our utmost respect and attentive ears. If you are a parent, remember that giving your children a sense of purpose is far more valuable than handing them a bottomless credit card. If you are a child, take a moment today to truly see your parents, not for what they can give you, but for the sacrifices etched into the wrinkles of their hands. We have the power to weave a beautiful legacy right now by choosing kindness over greed and responsibility over entitlement. Let us become the invisible thread that holds our loved ones together with moral strength rather than tearing them apart with selfishness. Ultimately, a life lived serving others is the only life that leaves a lasting, meaningful mark on this world. Disclaimer: this commentary reflects personal perspectives meant solely for general guidance, inspiration, and entertainment. I assume no responsibility or liability for any personal, financial, legal, or familial decisions made by listeners based on this content.